Welcome back to Dr. Supercoach podcast, powered by Code Sports. You're on with Pig, and today we have an incredibly special guest joining us. You might not recognise them, well, because they've never been on the podcast before, except for nearly every single episode. That's right, folks. Please give a warm welcome to the one, the only, the person that probably knows this podcast better than anyone else, the coach of terrifying glue. It is Pistol. How are you, friend?
Great intro, Pig. Do you think anyone will ever believe us ever again anytime we introduce someone? And then what happens if we do get someone new? Like, they're going to freak out. They're just going to assume we're lying.
Yeah, we'll get a special guest and actually introduce them and be like, this is how you talk to Pistol.
It'll be like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah, a little bit. As I was just reading that out, where does your team name Terrifying Glue come from?
This is, I wish it was a more interesting story, because it's like one of those really boring stories where I chose a team name for, I don't know, a video game. It may have actually been, it was the first year SuperCoach, was it 2007, 2008? And I couldn't think of a team name, didn't want to think about it for too long, so I just went to a name generator online, and it said, in the name generator, it said, use the word terrifying and then look at the first thing that you see on your desk. And then there was a glue stick. So I was like, all right, terrifying glue. And I was like, I guess I'll just change it later because you could change your team name. And then I just never changed it and have been using it for an incredibly long period of time for all of my team names on every fantasy sport, which is just, yeah, it was really good for like a playing team name until there was the SuperCoach horse racing. And then the terrifying glue. Yeah, that double meaning, which I didn't even think about because at that stage it'd been so many years of just using it. And then someone pointed out, they're like, that's a really horrible team name. And I'm like, oh my God.
It is, yeah.
It's not what I expected. But yeah, I'm sorry, it's not an exciting story.
I think we all have some names like that. Like I remember when you used to play Halo 1 I remember we went to a friend's house, and if you didn't have an account, it would randomly generate you a name. Like you'd be called Custard, or someone else would be called Sturdy, or someone else would be called Door Hinge, or whatever it was. And I think some of those just carry on. You just keep them. You're like, yeah, well, I am Custard now for the rest of my life.
I am Custard now.
Thank you,
I mean,
Halo.
yeah, no. Other people have better team names. I mean, you'll have to ask JB how he got his team name, JB_DIC. It's a hell of a story.
It's original. So how did your team go this week?
Not well. I had 2 donuts, as I guess some people had. I made the worst trade of the season, or one of the worst trades, I should say, and that was bringing in Strawn in the buys. Mm-hmm. I just needed one price rise to cash out. I don't know what I was doing back then. I can't remember. But either way, it screwed me up because it pushed Livingston and Kruger into my forward line bench. And then I have all these DPPs playing in the midfield, and I can't get them onto the field because I have Kerno, him and Moore are my only 2 non-DPP forwards. And I can't do anything about it. So copying the Kerno donut, I could cover Sheasel, fortunately, which is good. But then the English, because of Strawn, also got me. So yeah, he's basically stopped me. Strawn's cost me two problems. But yeah, double donut. So I only scored 2,371. So my rank is in absolute free fall. I fell massively. So now I'm down to 2,700, which is getting into a borderline top 1% here. I know rounding error is keeping me in there, but I don't really see how I survive unless English and Kerno are back in that top 1%, because I can cover Houston and Sheasel. That's fine. But English and Kerno, I think I'm going to be in trouble again, Pig.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are. I feel like anyone that actually avoided a donut or 2 last week was quite blessed. I think most people I saw had some form of glutinous pastry. So that was myself included. Can I read you my forward line scores this week?
Go for it.
Sam Flanders had a 120.
That's a good start.
Isaac Heaney had a 117.
This sounds brilliant.
Dylan Moore had a 139.
He was my captain this week, Pig.
I saw that. You went rogue and it worked for you. So those three are really good. And then all these guys are on field. Charlie Curnow, DNP, 0.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Dowling, DNP, 0. Nathan Kruger, DNP, 0.
What's your bench?
Will Dawson, DNP, 0. Cohen Livingston, DNP, 0.
Who's your R3?
I had, Tim English. I'll put Jackson forward. Tim English, DNP,
not
0.
good.
So 3 great scores from my premiums and then 3 donuts in the one line. And then even in the midfield, I had a Chad Warner donut, but it's okay because I was able to cover it with Jack Bytel's 15.
Oh, no.
So,
and he's up and down. Like, he could have had a good score. Like,
I think he got me a 70 the week before.
Yeah. Yeah, there was some monster scores from cover, like Frazier going, 119 or whatever, and
Marty Hoare.
Marty Hoare's 103, and Lawson was on 95 at halftime and only scored 108. That could have been massive. But, yeah, there was all these monster scores for the cover this week. So if you had any playing cover, you likely got a really good score out of them, which is absolutely crazy at this stage of the year, especially.
Yeah, absolutely great. So, yeah, it's we're hoping some of those guys are back, but I don't have much optimism on the guys of like English and Curnow and Sheasel. I haven't heard any news, and we probably won't. Like, teams usually announce their injury reports Tuesday night, so maybe that'll tell us something. Might even be later in the week, but I guess cross all your digits.
Yeah, no, you did help me though, Pig, without probably realizing. I had Marty Hoare as my emergency, and I could loophole with Sheasel because I've had 7 defenders, which I've mentioned a couple of times this year. And I was thinking about what you said about who has a really bad run, and you mentioned how Dale had a really bad run. So I benched Dale to take Marty Hoare's 103. And, I mean, Dale had a huge last quarter, but he was on like 44, I think it was, at 3-quarter time. So only ended with 77. And that was benching him against North Melbourne, where some people might think that's like a good matchup. But thank you very much for pointing that out, because you nailed it yet again.
There we go. Well, yeah, North have been quite surprising. We still think of them as easy, but they're not really at the moment. So, but we'll go through a bit later some guys that I think have really good round 24 matchups, and who, there still are some crazy people out there with a trade left, so we can cater to those guys and recommend some players. But in the meantime, no Patreon sign-ups this week, I believe.
That would be wild if someone decided to be like, you know what? It's the last week of the season. I need help.
Yeah, I don't think so. But Cancer Council-wise, we've got quite a few donations come in.
Excellent.
So we'll start off with Maybe or Joel has donated for 2 donuts. They didn't even put any words, just put the emoji of 2 donuts. So sorry to hear that, Coach, but I'm sure you weren't alone with the donuts this week.
Definitely not.
And Pistol himself, you have donated for 2 donuts, and you've said my first 2 Krispy Kremes in a while.
I haven't had a donut in, I think the only time was, I think it was 2019, Pig, and I put Gorn on the bench without that emergency when I was doing a loophole.
Oh, yes, that old chestnut.
Yeah, so that was the last time I think I had one. So it's been a long time, and we've got the Donate for Donuts campaign that we continually run. So in support of Cancer Council and us, donating for donuts.
Good on you. You fly out of Sydney a bit, and they've got a Krispy Kreme stand there. Do you ever get a Krispy Kreme at the airport?
I do.
Yeah, me too. A little cookies and cream is usually my go-to.
Yes, I do the same as well.
All right, I'll see you there.
Yeah, it's a date.
And then we have we've got some other special Cancer Council donations that I'd like to read out. So mentioned it once or twice throughout the season, but the Keeper League that I'm in with 11 other Dr. Supercoach Patreon legends started this year, so a first-year keeper. We've raised about $250 to the Cancer Council over our season.
Wow.
So we've just calculated those on Sunday night, sent everyone their invoice, and pretty much everyone's paid up. It equaled to like an average of about $20 per coach. And look, if it's something people are interested in doing next year, this is what we did. So we gave fines for different things. So if you had a 100-point scorer on your bench while having a sub-100 scorer in their place on the field, you copped a $1 fine. If you had a captain score under 100, you got a $1 fine.
Oh, this is fun.
Yeah, if you copped a donut, self-explanatory, $1 for every donut. If you fielded a player who starts the game in the sub-vest, that's a $1 fine. And that actually happened a lot. I think
that's hilarious.
People think about it that you won't have them in Classic, but a lot of times like you might have a Jack McRae or a Caleb Daniel or a Luke Parker that randomly gets made a sub an hour before the game, and that happened a lot. So a dollar for that, or dropping a player to waivers who then goes on to score 100 that week. That also happened quite a bit. So some of my favourites. Cam drafted Marshall and Nankervis in his ruck line and can only field one. And he seemed to lose each week ruck roulette. He'd always field the guy who's sub-tonned and then he'd have 150 on the bench. It happened.
Wait,
I reckon he got
draft?
like $10 worth of fines from that alone.
Why did he draft both Nank and Marshall?
I don't know. That was his tactic. He then worked out the loop option of only having one emergency later in the year, which saved him a bit. But Blake also did a similar thing with English and Meek. He kept looping them and it kept failing. Another funny one, Jane's vice-captain at Gordon's 151, and he wasn't paying attention even though he had a loops, and he ended up taking Redmond's 78 as a captain.
Oh, my God.
David captained 2 79s in a row from different players. And then...
That's talent.
One of the weeks, Warren had three tons on the bench, while 3 sub tons on the field in their place.
Oh no!
So
wow, that adds a good little side game to the main game.
Yeah, it is. It's great, and for those that kind of were potentially missing out on finals, it still gave us something to set our teams and do throughout the final series as well, because we kept fines going. So yeah, it was a good bit of fun. We raised, it was about $20 fine on average per coach, about $250 for Cancer Council. So thanks to Blake, Mark, Matt, Jay, Cam, Justin, David, Warren, Adam, and James. Thanks for a good season, and thanks for $250 to the Cancer Council.
And did the person who was loopholing with their bench win?
No, not in the end. Congratulations to Mark for winning the league for the first year of our league. So Jay was talking a lot of rubbish in the last 3 weeks and pretty fancied himself. So Mark's knocked him off. So good on you, Mark.
That's fantastic. Well done to all you guys, and thank you so much for your donations. That sounds like something that's hopefully takes off next year and we get more people involved, because that seemed like heaps of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Have we got any podcast questions you want to go through?
We have so many, Pig. I don't know where to start. We have one. Oh, sorry. We have 3, but I'm going to roast 2 of them and leave you with 1. Boris -back-to-back has asked, who do you think will be the top 6 scorers on both the forward and the defensive lines this week? Why do you need to know the top 6 for this week on each line? How many? You have 12 trades? What? Why do you not need to know just... You might own some of them, but then we're not going to suggest... we think it's Flanders. Anyway, Boris, we're not doing that. I'm sorry. Stefan's asked if you guys have the means, which I appreciate that he's putting a asterisk next to it. I'm curious to know how many players normally get rested in the final round for nothing to play for type teams. And again, this is an impossible question, right? Like, teams want to try some stuff. If they just missed finals, maybe Collingwood this week, they just missed out. So now they might try things, or maybe they'll go for it because it's like mathematically possible. But then teams like West Coast just want to try and play well, so they're probably not going to do any crazy things. They're probably just going to keep it consistent to see, try and get what they're doing to work. So everyone still has different motivations. It's not all play people in different positions and see if that works for every team. So impossible question to answer. Apologies. That's just not going to happen for you. Which leaves me to the last question, Pig. Marcus, with an actually decent question. Thank you, Marcus. Houston trade options with no money in the bank.
Yeah, there is still a bit of meat on the bone for some of these guys. First thought I'm looking at, I really like the Hawthorn guys of Carl Amon and Massimo D'Ambrosio. I'd probably prefer Amon just because he's put, I think it's 2 120s in the last 3 weeks. So I really like those guys. We did just talk about, North being a little bit restrictive to defenders in terms of what we're talking about with Dale, but I think Amon and Hawthorn themselves are just rolling so much. I'm not too worried about that. So, I mean, if we look at DFS, North are still a positive matchup for that winger defender role. Like not a really positive, but still enough to give Amon a bit, I think. I don't mind. I've mentioned him so many times, but he's not playing. If Stephen May's back, maybe you could look at Stephen May.
Give it a rest, Pig. He's never coming back.
I've got to mention him every week.
He's going to retire.
He's got a very, very, very nice matchup for defenders in Collingwood if he's back. But if he's not, don't trade in Stephen May.
Okay. I'll take that advice. Thank you.
You've got a little Sydney Swan you're interested in?
I have also mentioned Roberts a couple of times. He's got a good 5-round average. He's in the right price rounds with a 5-round average of 113. He's got a good role. Mills went back last week, which is a little bit scary if they decide to use Mills more as an outlet. So I don't feel like massively comfortable with it. I probably, eye test wise, Amon's looks really, really good. And so is Mass. So both of those guys probably give it a little bit of a nudge for me. Just with, the Swans as well, not needing to, they're clear on the ladder as well. So it's like a little bit scary. Whereas Hawthorn need to win and they need to put on goals as well. So I feel like a lot more confident in that. The other guy that is cheaper and has a good ceiling, and you'll hate this, is Zach Fisher. He's 450k. And, when the roll's there, which it is a lot of the time, I think Kurt shifted forward at a stage as well during the game. So I don't know what they're doing. They also might be testing out things, but Fisher has a good role, and when he plays, he generally scores decently. It's not my favourite pick, but if you are terrified of the Hawthorn players, you can be terrified of Zach Fisher too, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me feel a little bit icky considering we've traded him in and out so much and he's got injured and subbed. But, for one game, it's not a bad idea. I think Amon would be my top recommendation. He's on a roll, Hawks are on a roll. They play at UTAS, which is a really big ground in terms of dimensions. I think it's actually the biggest ground the AFL plays at. So hopefully for a winger or, that kind of running defender, it gives him more space to get out and get marks. So Amon is probably my recommendation. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I like it. I think Ed Richards is good, but he's got a tough matchup, GWS. I think some people might look to Trent Rivers. And I think that's a valid pick, but I don't think you're likely to get a big score out of him in his last 6 games. He's got 99, 97, 90, 90, 45, 93. So lots of 90s, and you probably pepper that 100 mark. And someone like Sicily's got a high ceiling, but the ball might not get down there. So unless he swings forward, I don't love it. So yeah, I'd probably be in the same boat as you, looking at one of the Hawthorn guys.
Yep. Well, we've answered that one. If he was, he's not because he said at that price, but scrounging a little bit of money to get up to Nick Newman would be my preference this week against St Kilda. But obviously if you don't have that money, I like Amon.
Yeah, I think Nick Newman, he's only 540, so just a tiny bit more, which isn't breaking the budget. I think there'll be other people that'll probably have a little bit more cash to burn. Is he your, let's call it number one POD sort of defender pick? And I said we're not going to mention the obvious one, so not the Dacosses of the world. Is he your number one POD type guy?
He's probably my number 2. I still think Tom Stewart is the best defender trade-in option if you can do it. Playing against West Coast this week, who are pretty much the easiest midfield matchup, and he's still a 70% midfielder. So I would say Tom Stewart is still my number 1 defender trade-in, but Nick Newman's probably second with that St Kilda matchup. I think Lockie Whitfield should do all right if you've got, but he's over 600k. He should do all right against Bulldogs, but yeah, I would say Stewart and Newman are my 2 ultimate defenders. If I could get in anyone.
All right, well, if we shift gear for a sec and you think maybe people have some DPP action to go off and you're looking perhaps in the midfield, do you have someone in that midfield price range? We'll just do under his price and over his price, kind of similar to how we just answered the defenders.
Yeah, well, I've kind of gone a little bit. So this is probably a good segue into, I've looked at players with a good round 24 matchup.
That's what we want.
I've kind of broken them into categories of more than 600k, which was for the defenders was Whitfield, the 550 to 600, which I like Stewart, 500 to 550, I like Newman and I like Amon. And then if you go less than 500k, like we said, maybe Rivers, D'Ambrosio. Holmes also has that nice matchup, but he hasn't been very good lately. So
terrible.
If you then go to midfielders, if you're looking at more than 600k, which I don't know who has that kind of money, but Zach Butters is in insane form. I think he's got a 3-round average of 140. He plays against Freo, who have been giving up a few points recently, so nice from him. But Lachie Neale still, I think he's still my preference. He's in that 550 to 600k range. He's got Essendon this week. I don't think Essendon really have much to play for, whereas Lachie Neale has genuinely has a Brownlow to play for. He would be wanting to try and get 3 more votes to kind of give himself a chance for that. So, I mean, he got 123 on the weekend despite being tagged all game. And I don't know if Essendon will tag him, so I really like Neale. But if you need to go under and don't have that money, Noah Anderson against the Tigers, I think is really juicy. He's been horrible away from Gold Coast this year, but he's actually played Richmond only 4 times in his career. He's never gone under 122.
Wow.
So he loves playing Richmond, and 2 of those were in Melbourne, so that's kind of nice. Josh Dunkley also has that Essendon matchup, so I like him. Elliot Yeo, if you want a mid or defender, I guess he could be all right. If you want to go really cheap, Hugh McCluggage, Patrick Dangerfield against that Eagles matchup, even Touk Miller against Richmond. I think like they're all less than 500k. If you need to scrounge those guys, I think we'll have a good game. What do you think about all those midfielders?
No, it makes complete sense to me. I think I always like Touk, just being the really cheap price range guy. But yeah, I think if I had unlimited money, Lachie Neale is probably the person that I would back for this week. Not just because he's playing your mob, but for all of the actual reasons that you gave. I think they're all very legitimate. So thank you for the well-researched answers, because that will help a lot of people.
That's all right. And there's 2 more positions on the ground we can go through if you'd like. I've done the same thing for Rucks. So maybe this is someone has a trade left and Tim English isn't back, but if you've somehow got over $700,000, Tristan Cherry is the best player in the world right now, and he's going to absolutely rip Lloyd Meek apart this week as well.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously, you said it. I don't know why I asked.
Tune into my captain's video. I've discussed it in a bit of detail, but Meek is not restrictive.
No, I don't think he's restrictive, but he is a big body, so I wonder how those hits will go, tap outs.
Yeah, I think Cherry, well, little spoiler, but I think Cherry's going to be my number 1 captain recommendation for the 3rd week in a row. He's just on an absolute hot streak right now.
Yeah, hard to
Not many people have that much money. If you don't, still over 600k. Rowan Marshall has been in great form. He's got a 5-round average of 131. Like, if you look at his last 5 games, they read really, really nice. And he's got Carlton this week. Pitnet's kind of middle of the pack. He's not restrictive. He's not easy, but Marshall's on such good form that I'd back him. Between 550 and 600, Jared Witts is an option. Like Nankervis has been giving up a lot of points recently, so that could be one. It's not sexy at all, but could fill a hole for a week. We recommended Kieran Briggs last week for someone that needed to go under English's price. So Kieran Briggs, he put up a ton against who did they play? Freo. So he had Reedy matchup.
Yep.
And this week, if English isn't back, well, even if English is back, he doesn't restrict. So he's going to have a field day against whichever Bulldogs ruck they put up. So I actually still like Briggs for that lower price. Or if you're really, really scrounging the bottom of the barrel, Jordan Sweet could give you a 95 probably against Reedy unless Sean Darcy's back. So some random ones there, but like we said last week, Cherry, Marshall and Briggs are probably the three we love in the different price ranges.
So a couple of questions. One, how's Sweet destroying Riley O'Brien in the ruck? That was impressive.
I did not expect that. Riley O'Brien's normally quite restrictive, so
he got destroyed. He scored 63 Supercoach and lost the hitouts. So that was well done by Sweek. I mean, maybe Strong comes back and saves the day, and this was all a long plot.
You never know.
You never know. Look, let's keep an eye on the teams, because if Gawn's ankle is a bit sore, maybe they rest him. And then Darcy Cameron's been in incredibly good form. He's had, in his last 6 games, he's only had 1 sub 120 and only 2 sub 130s. So he's also been in really good form if Gawn.
Yeah.
I doubt he'd be out. And same to look at, ironically, if Grundy's rested, because he's being severely managed at the moment. So it might open up other opportunities there. Probably not, but hopefully for Strawn. Maybe not, actually. That'd be terrible if I lose Grundy and English.
If Grundy does get rested, then maybe O'Reilly O'Brien will dominate whoever they bring in.
Maybe. I still like Marshall. I just think he's in such good form as well. And I think they're going to really try and try their best to eliminate Carlton from the finals, because Fremantle play after them. So I think Saints will put on a really good show.
I think so too. Ross Lyon's already talked about trying to kind of crash the party of the guys that, like, he said that he wanted to beat Geelong to try and ruin their top 4 hopes. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's saying that he wants to try and beat Carlton to knock them out of the 8 as well. He's got it. He's still got a bit to prove, even though they're not making it. So I agree that Marshall's incredible. If we go to forwards, then there are some people wanting forwards. So more than 600k, there is not a single forward that costs over 600k.
Good reason.
So 550k, obviously Flanders and Zorko are 2 of the main guys, and especially Flanders this week against Richmond, but everyone owns them. I talked him up last week. I still like Jesse Hogan. He just had a 124 on the weekend, kicked an absolute bag, could have kicked more. I'm not sure he'll go quite as well this weekend. Bulldogs are a bit restrictive for forwards, and I mean, the reason I was keen on him is because he's going to be hunting bags to win the Coleman. He's probably got the Coleman locked up now, so he probably doesn't have to go crazy, but he's just in incredible form as well. He's hard to stop.
Yeah.
You recommended Dylan Moore last weekend for those that didn't have him, and he went off. He got a 139 and looked incredible. So both of our recommendations of Hogan and Moore did really well. A lot of people have him, but if you don't, Dylan Moore against North at UTAS, I think, is going to run riot. I mean, I could mention Heaney, but everyone has him. What do we think of Brett Daniels? Like, he had that monster score, but I actually went back. It's not just then. If you go back and look at his last 5 weeks, he hasn't done anything wrong. He's had a really, really good 5 weeks. Do you think he's actually an option?
I mean, I love Brent Daniels. I've spoken about him a lot in the past, but unfortunately, I wouldn't really consider him. We're just trying to get someone with a good 1-round matchup, and playing against the Bulldogs in like a must-win game isn't isn't the matchup I want to target. So that's a pass for me. And look, Philippou was sick again, but I do think he's still going to be good and have a good role. So that hasn't really changed. I just don't know if he'll play. Ironically, when we suggested Sam Darcy, if you remember.
We did.
Because we thought English wasn't going to play and he would ruck, and we got that wrong. And then Sam Darcy kicked 7 goals and scored 146 anyway. But now we know that he's not going to be the ruck when English doesn't play. I think he loses his appeal against GWS as well. So I'd probably stay away from him. And that was just a bit of a fluke that pulled that one out of the hat. There was other people we talked about. One was Alex Neil-Bullen and Matt Kennedy, and then also the Geelong boys who have West Coast this week. Where are you leaning between the cheap options?
Well, there's a few. Connor McDonald we talked up last week, because he was playing against Richmond. He did go? Yeah, he did quite well. He got an 88. That's kind of, he's just peppering that around 90 every single week. He actually had a 98 dream team, so maybe left a little bit on the table. He's one that I probably would have rather got last week if you're doing it for that Richmond matchup. I still think he'll do quite well against North, probably another in the 80s or 90s. Jeremy Cameron's probably the one that genuinely could kick a bag and score a big score against West Coast. But he hasn't been amazing lately, so it's a bit of a risk. I talked up Joe Danaher last week, if you remember, and you tried to poo-poo that. Mm-hmm. And he put 107 on the rabble that is Collingwood. And I think he could put up another ton against the rabble that is Essendon. So,
I got to agree with that.
You gave me a little bit of slack for recommending Joe Danaher. He came out, kicked 4 goals, 2. Could have been a lot more. It was the most Joe Danaher game I've ever seen in my life. He did 1,000 good things and 1,000 horrible things. So,
yeah.
I would have liked to get him last week to get both of these nice matchups, but even to get one, I think he could go well against Essendon. Yeah,
he's likely to. I think that's a better shout this week than last week, but still a good pick. And again, you've still got Zach Fisher, unfortunately, as an option.
Yeah, that is actually probably one of the better options, to be honest, because he's got that half. He's just got the easy role. Most forwards have to kick goals to score well. Obviously, that's their role, their job. Mm-hmm. But Zach Fisher, as a forward eligible, playing that silly halfback distributor role, that's just a cheat code. So that might even be the best option.
I don't know if have we got a definitive best option for
what kind of price ranking? Are we talking about?
Well, ranking's 506. So sub. Let's do sub 500. So we rule out Hogan because I feel like that's where you're going to lie. So what's the best option under 500 this week? 1 week punt.
All right, let's have a look. Do you reckon Alex Neil-Bullen will tag Danaher this week? Because
Danaher.
Danaher's on the mind. Sorry, I can't stop thinking about him. Do you reckon Dacos. Alex Neil-Bullen will tag Dacos? Because when he does do the tagging role, he can score all right. Actually, pretty well.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they just let Dacos run around. I think they just try and, Melbourne's going to still want to beat Collingwood, I assume. And I think Dacos has given them enough problems in the past that they probably want to... Look, they also don't have the midfielders to fill out their midfield, so they've got spots up for tagging. So I feel like he's likely, in his final match for the club to tag Dacos.
Yep. Okay. Well, he's an option then. Mm-hmm. Zach Fisher, I actually still just think he's the safest. He's just got that role. So I think it's probably him. I do like Connor McDonald, Jeremy Cameron, and my boy Joe Danaher are probably my favourite ones. Do you have a favourite one? I'm probably going to say Fisher just for the safety.
I just find it hilarious that, pre-season, we're sitting down, don't know what the season's going to hold, and we're like, I can't believe out of all the players in the AFL, we are recommending Zach Fisher. Like, it's so unbelievable that we've come to this point of the season that we are actually recommending Zach Fisher. And then, like 5 or 6 weeks into the season, he gets injured, we trade him out, whatever it is. And then he comes back and we're like, I can't believe, because Kirch is injured or whatever. Again, we're like, I can't believe we're recommending Zach Fisher again. And then he gets injured. And now we're in the final round and we're sitting down and I'm like, what's your top option under this price? And you're like, oh yeah, Zach Fisher. I'm like, come on.
It's just that cheat code half-back role where you don't have to kick goals to score. But, I mean, we were talking just a little tangent off-air beforehand and we were talking about McKercher and, like, I think we're both thinking Zach Fisher's probably not going to be there next year or maybe not playing in the best 22 and maybe it's McKercher's team, but... You know, Zach Fisher's going to be there this week, and he can score in the role. So those 4 I've mentioned, is Joe Danaher at the top? What?
Oh, look, I still like Philippou. And I think Carlton, they're depleted. I think Saints will win. They're playing really good footy. They've been good to watch, which is not something I've said a lot about Saints historically. But I think Philippou is a good option. But unfortunately, it's a bit windy down in Tassie, and someone who takes some kickouts might do pretty well there. So I probably would be leaning Zach Fisher.
Have you already checked the Launceston wind forecast?
No, I haven't. It's just usually windy.
Yeah,
when it's down there. So honestly, it probably is Zach Fisher. And look, I know you hate it. I know everyone listening hates it, and I hate having to say it, but it probably is Zach Fisher.
Yeah.
And,
I think it is.
If he's out, then that's great because you still have time to get your Danahers. You still have time to get your Philippous. I guess Philippou would be a bit risky just because he's in the last game. Second last game. You'd probably be forced to get Matt Kennedy, which isn't the end of the world, but that might be a bit dangerous this week. So yeah, probably Zach Fisher, and if he's out, I'd probably lean Big Danaher.
Yeah, I reckon the best option is to find some DPP and get Took Miller.
I think I could say find DPP and get Lockie Neal. Now what?
Okay. Well, I meant for that
Cherry?
price, but yeah. Find $200,000 and get Cherry.
Yeah, okay. Done. Problem solved. God, It's easy.
And yeah, well, I noticed we were talking about Dan Houston, but we didn't actually mention it. Obviously, he's going to tribunal. So David Zeta will let us know how long he's out for, but it seems like it'll be a few weeks at least, but definitely this week.
Yes, and that is quite unfortunate for him to miss finals as well. That's never like seeing a player do that or miss those games. Both can be true. All right, well, before we wrap up, Pig, any Brownlow predictions? And I guess who do you think's going to win the grand final as well?
Oh, all right. Especially at quarter time of last week, I thought Brisbane can't lose again this year. And I posted that in Slack, and then they lost like an hour later.
Yep, I remember that.
But I would probably put my money on Brisbane winning the flag. I just think they're such a good team and like no real holes. So I'd probably pick them. I mean, Sydney and some Port and Geelong on their day. Bulldogs are coming home like a steam train too, but
yes,
if you had to make me pick one team, I'd pick Brisbane. And then for the Brownlow, I actually reckon it's going to be really, really tight. I think Lockie Neal is a genuine chance for a third. I think Patrick Cripps probably has his nose just in front at the moment. And then like Zach Merritt, Isaac Heaney and Nick Dacos have all had insane years too. So any of those three could pop up. It's really hard when just like, I mean, we saw with Neil last year get a 3-vote game for something where he barely touched the ball. So it's hard to predict, but I would say Neil and Cripps are probably the two edging at the moment. What about you for all of those questions you've asked me?
No, I agree with the Brownlow prediction. I think Cripps probably goes ahead this round, and we'll have to see how they goes. Him or Neil is probably there for me. I would have loved to have seen Heaney win, but that was taken away from us. On the grand final side, great question, Pig.
Yes.
I think, honestly, if Hawthorn didn't have to play Bulldogs in the first week of finals, I think if they can avoid Bulldogs, Hawthorn would be extremely dangerous. I don't think there's a team there that they can't beat, except Western Bulldogs. So that would suck to see them go out in the first round against Bulldogs. But I honestly think we're probably going to get a winner from outside the top 4.
That's fun.
And probably Brisbane Bulldogs, Hawthorn, in that slot. I think the best team in the top 4 is probably Port, but I don't know if Port can get it done at the MCG. So if I take that into account, and I'm not sure Brisbane can get it done at the MCG as well. So that changes things. But yeah, I think the winner of, if it's a Bulldogs Hawthorn first elimination, I reckon one of them should do pretty well.
That's a big call. But
huge.
I like it. They're both so fun to watch as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, Hawthorn's first quarter last week was... I went to the bathroom and I came back out, and it had been they kicked 5 goals in that time, and I only peed.
No, rookie mistake. Don't go to the toilet when Hawthorn are playing.
Oh, it was just lightning. It was very exciting, super exciting. So when they're up and about, if they can maintain that rage for... I mean, honestly, they say, you got to play 4-quarter footy to win, but Hawthorn only need to play a half to win. They play 2 quarters like that, and you're set.
And it was without Will Day for most of it too, who's, we think's probably one of their best players. So lots of upside for those guys. And actually...
That's going to be the issue.
Mitch Lewis as well. He's not back, so he's meant to be their key star full forward. So even next year, look out.
I mean, Will Day's done us a thank you in terms of his price. It's unfortunate. Hopefully he can get back in time for finals with that broken collarbone. But he's put out a 10 after having, a 40 and 50 score. So he was averaging, 105, and then the last 3 weeks combined has scored 100. And he's dropped his average down to 91, and that's how he ends the season. So,
wow. He's going to be a lot cheaper even than he started this year.
I mean, he ends up probably being, around 500k on the dot almost. So
that's tempting.
That's something I'm pretty keen to start. I think he's someone that's got 105. Did I even do that right? I may have even done the maths wrong. But yeah, I think he will still provide at least 10 points under price potential. So I don't know. I'm talking about next year already. Get me off air. But Pig, thank you so much for all these podcasts this year. I'm not sure if we're going to podcast together again this season, but it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope people tuning in have enjoyed, having a new co-host on the Dr. SuperCoach podcast. I certainly have, and have enjoyed podcasting with you and watching you get better and better every week.
Well, thanks very much. It's been it has. It's been a pleasure and a lot of fun, joining this Slack community as one, but, getting to work with you and Chizo and JB and put out this content, and credit to you as well. You made it very easy for me to slot in and just kind of do my thing on this podcast, do the research, and then have some good chats with you guys. It's been a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to doing it in the future. Awesome.
All right. Well, best of luck this weekend for all your grand finals. You're in Pig. And best of luck to everyone else for their grand finals. And we will catch you in the season recap or review.